Welcome back to the Puckn Pod. On today's episode, we discuss the Four Nations tournament. We also discuss post-tournament expectations of our teams. We also pay tribute to some recent celebrity passings. That's all coming up next, right here on the Puckn Pod. Let's puck and go! Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Puckn Pod. My name is Joe.
I'm Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
Well, gentlemen, we got a lot to talk about. But before we talk about anything, I just have to say one thing. I don't know if you remember, a couple of weeks back, I had pneumonia. And I was coughing a lot, while we were trying to record. And it was only about maybe 2 weeks ago where I finally got rid of that cough. Well, I got sick again on the freaking weekend. My daughter passed on another GD cold to me, and my immune system is like, yeah, we're not done yet. So here I am suffering through it. So if you hear sniffles, that would be your man, Joe, sniffling in the corner.
Like an aftershock.
I know. It's ridiculous. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just me, but I feel like sometimes... you feel like relieved that you can breathe again and, you're done with all the coughing and it was relentless. Like having pneumonia is really difficult because you're coughing for a couple of weeks. But for me, ultimately, it was a relief to be, healthy for about a week. And then to catch this cold all over again, I was just like, you're shaking your fist at the clouds. You know what I mean?
It's kind of like, it's the funny and yet sad kind of thing is that, they call kids like little petri dishes because they're always carrying bugs and stuff like that. Yet they're supposed to have the heightened immune system. And so they get over it in a few days and we're coughing our guts out for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm actually pretty thankful that my immune system is pretty decent because when I do get sick because of my sleep apnea, it actually takes me 2 or 3 times longer than most people to recover if it's like... to do with my lungs,
and
right?
You have asthma too, don't
I have
you?
Asthma as well,
yeah.
And I'm overweight, so woo! Let's go!
The trifecta.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny, and ultimately, I feel bad because my daughter, unfortunately, she actually has strep throat, so she's sitting at home, kind of. She hasn't gone to school at all this week, and it's been tough on her because she's, she wants to have the same energy she normally has, and she'll get little spurts of energy, but then she just crashes. She sleeps most of the day and stuff like that. So I feel bad for her. I hope she gets, I hope she feels better eventually, and she can get through it, pretty decently, hopefully soon. But it just sucks how it affects you too in the end. I had to take a day off work this week just to sort of make sure I got the rest I needed and whatnot. But the most difficult part of this whole thing is not being able to breathe. I had the worst sleep last night because I woke up in the middle of the night not being able to breathe. Had to take some sinus pills and whatnot to try and clear it up and be able to go back to sleep again. So, and I'm a terrible sleeper as is. So, those issues, when they stick around, it's like, it makes your life a living hell for most of the part, but I'm doing okay in the long run. I like to complain a lot about my own issues, but, gentlemen, it's been a couple of weeks since the Four Nations tournament was here. I will probably be the first to admit it was a lot more exciting than I thought it would be. And, I feel like we should probably talk about it and just sort of give our thoughts on how the tournament went.
Yeah, obviously, the outcome that all of us, I know, were expecting and hoping for. It was in question the first game against the finals. I won't get the team just yet because we're talking about the tournament right now. But there was concern, obviously, with that first game, and then Canada really showed that they are still strong.
I didn't think that Canada was going to win that tournament. I did not have them as my pick. I thought the Americans the whole way.
I thought they were going to destroy. I thought the Americans were going to take it, and not only just take it, but
commandingly,
embarrassingly, yeah. And it actually reminded me a lot of the 2010 Olympics in Vancouver. And I don't know if you guys remember, but when I was living in Vancouver during that time, and I remember when the United States beat Canada in the round robin that year. It was like, there was some doubt with us Canadians, right? We were like, man, can we really lose, the gold medal? Can we even get a medal on home soil? And then the way it kind of turned out, it was incredible. This time around, with the Four Nations, it was interesting because, we were all looking at it like, is this really a tournament for best on best when you consider all the injuries that were out there, and you consider, the fact that it was only 4 teams. There were certain teams that weren't involved that probably should have been involved. It was still an exciting tournament in the end.
Well, even like some of the roster selection, like, right, you wouldn't have expected some players to be cut out from the teams that were there, like some of the American players. I certainly thought some of the Canadian players, I was quite surprised with the choices. Even Canada's starting goaltender, to be honest, through the tournament was not expected.
We all doubted Binnington. Yeah. We all did.
I mean, I have that as a couple of talking points later as well to discuss that in a little bit more detail, just because I think we all kind of agree that we were like, why is he even playing? Yeah. And there was a couple of times during the tournament that you're a little like, ooh,
like a couple of soft goals, maybe.
Yeah, that sort of thing. But they, and the Americans and the Canadians both were battling a couple of pretty key injuries.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you can kind of be devil's advocate, I guess, and say, you wonder what could have happened either way. Other than that, Makar missed the first game against the Americans, right? So, and he's such a difference maker in the game as it is. And the same with Matthew Tkachuk on the American side as one example, right? What a difference maker that guy can be, on the ice, but like off the ice. What I mean by that is the bench. Like, because he runs his mouth.
But I mean, when you consider that too, like, it just goes to show that you didn't need the best goaltender to play for Canada when you consider the depth that they had on defense and that they had on forwards as well defensively, but also offensively. In the end, it was kind of a it was like it wasn't necessarily a shooting gallery, but like there was definitely some skilled players.
Oh, definitely
on both sides, and in terms of the finals. But it was an exciting tournament for the players that were there, and they did bring their all, which is kind of you kind of think when you're going into it, you're kind of thinking, is this just going to be a glorified all-star game, really? But it ended up being more than that. I think really they wanted to win.
Yeah, like I think it was definitely a show of not just the talent of the players, but even the coaching, and in terms of how the games progressed, and certainly the matchups that were happening. Again, we talk about Binnington. Outside of even the coaching side of it, none of us probably see him that often, obviously, because he's the St. Louis Blues, starting goaltender. Really only probably ever watch those games when they're playing our teams. Yeah. Obviously, I think myself and a lot of people underestimated Jordan Binnington throughout the tournament in terms of his capabilities. He did let some questionable goals in some of the games that he played, but John Cooper believed in him for being able to step up in the key moments. Obviously, he did that in the St. Louis run to the Stanley Cup, and he proved it again in this tournament.
I mean, really, I think the whole country kind of thought that Binnington wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
And to be honest, it's not only is it awesome to get that win, and, I think Canada was showing that this tournament meant a little bit more than just hockey, right?
I
think we can all agree that. And, I mean, we can get into that a bit more, too. But just to finish on Binnington, the fact that the entire country, I think, for the most part as fans, except for maybe, where he's from, thought that, he probably wasn't the best choice as a starting goaltender, but maybe that experience was going to pay off for him, and it did, right, in the end of the tournament. So
yeah.
Well, it is surprising that they locked in the rosters as far ahead of the tournament as they did, because you'd have to wonder whether they were, looking through the season, oh, maybe this wasn't the right decision. Maybe we should have swapped him out, but they had to lock in the rosters, and if I was originally looking at the team, I would have, looking at how Washington Capitals have been this year, I would have put Logan Thompson on that team ahead of probably both Binnington and Aiden Hill. Montembeault I knew was going to be the third stringer, so I figured he's probably the easiest to swap out. But the way Logan Thompson's played this year, I would have expected him to be the
me too. I was
starter.
Thinking the same thing for sure. Yeah, going back.
So I didn't realize until they were talking about it during the tournament that was literally the first international competition since 2016.
Wow.
Because that was
best on best.
Best on best.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So And I also didn't realize that necessarily it was going to replace the All-Star, like the whole All-Star experience for this season. Because I'm actually one of the rare people that like both. I like the All-Star and the skills competition.
Yeah.
I'm probably one of the rare ones. I watch it.
I enjoy 3-on-3 hockey, to be honest. Like I'm a big fan of 3-on-3 hockey. It would be nice if they actually had 3-on-3 that was a bit more meaningful, like than the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Which is funny when you say that, because they are playing for $1 million. You know, they're playing for something in the All-Star game. But I think that, you know, international hockey is a little bit more exciting because it does mean more, you know, in the end. They are playing for a championship trophy.
It'd be nice if they kind of adopted the MLB way of doing the All-Star game, where whichever side wins the American League or the National League, they get the home advantage in the World Series. That'd be cool to do with the 3-on-3 tournament. You know, you do probably the Atlantic and the Central. Whoever wins that All-Star game, they'll get the home ice advantage. If that team doesn't make the finals, it'd still be the conference that gets the home ice advantage.
I do like that. I think that's kind of neat. Yeah, give it a little bit more incentive, right?
Exactly.
The only argument I would have towards that is the fact that hockey is such a higher level of emotion involved in the game, because, I mean, really, you got to bring intensity to win, right? And it's like, you're not going to do that in an All-Star game. None of these guys want to do that. They don't want to be hurt. They want to be in Tahiti, right? Whereas in the MLB,
I don't know why. The only reason why we're laughing is because of the way you said Tahiti.
Tahiti.
Just that little high-pitched tone at the end.
But in the All-Star game for the MLB, I mean, Scherzer's not going to plunk a guy.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to happen. The motions aren't going to get there. In baseball, you see it so much less. In hockey, you see scrums 10, 15 times a night. You know, that emotion runs high. Baseball, it's just, as much as they play hard with what's given to them, there isn't that physical, emotional side of the game that they have to actually battle for.
Well, and it's the type of game, right? Obviously, hockey is a more physical game than baseball is, so you're less likely to see aggression like that when you got a bunch of guys standing around a field waiting for the ball to come their way. So
that would be my only argument to having it mean so much as, you know, like home ice advantage in the final.
Well, I think specifically, just going further with that topic too, this specific tournament did mean a lot more, especially to Canadians, because of everything that's going on politically, right? When we think about, you know, everything that, and we've talked about in past podcasts about how, you know, Canadian fans are booing the American national anthem. Obviously, this is in retaliation to what's going on with, you know, Donald Trump and the American, you know, politics, quote unquote. I'm not going to call it politics because it's not really politics. But, you know, as we've gotten further and further into the tenure of his second run as president, we as Canadians are feeling more and more like we have to defend ourselves. And so playing a tournament like this, especially against the United States, it just meant that much more for us to win it.
People are actually starting to like Alberta again. It's crazy.
Did you hear? No, I'm not going to get into it. This is not a political show. We're not going to get into it. But, you know, Did you hear about this guy going down to the States to try and convince them to make Alberta the 51st state?
I did.
Have you hear about this? No. Yeah, there's a guy canvassing. I don't know what his name is. I haven't done all the research. I just know that it's happened. There's a guy who's gone down to meet with the president. Well, I don't know if he met with the president, but he's met with somebody, and he's trying to canvass them to take Alberta as the 51st
annex
state.
Alberta.
Yeah. You know, he's got the support of maybe 200 people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. These are people. Again, it's not a political show. We're not going to get into it, but I just think that it's kind of, you know, you're not exactly going to get a warm welcome when you come back home. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like, I'm sure there's people that can look at the possible benefits to, say, if Canada was annexed into the States in terms of having one level currency, having the additional financial support and that kind of stuff. There is, I'm sure, the benefits side to that, but it's, you know, to put your sovereignty in question and, you know, what we stand for as Canadians, because we're some of the most loved people in the world, and it's because of the type of people we are, what we stand for as a country. You know, freedom and love and devotion and you know, helping our fellow man. It's not something the United States is known for. So
I will say this too, like everything that's been going down, if anything, it's brought Canadians together. whether you support one side of politics or the other, we've all seemed to come together and we're standing for the same thing, which is like, this is our country and we're not going to let you take it away from us, just so that you can have more power somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure there's more to it, but it's really cool to see. It gives me goosebumps just thinking about it, the fact that Canadians are standing together and we're all very proud Canadians.
I did see a post earlier on X. Somebody I follow back east in Toronto, and they were talking about how they were in a grocery store today, and one of the clerks he overheard helping a lady find stuff, a certain brand that was Canadian.
Yeah.
And then he said he moved on to the next aisle, and he saw a lady and her son, and she was on the phone asking him, "Well, what about this one? Wait a sec, let me Google it." No, not Canadian. It seems to be kind of trickling down. People are at least conscious of it, and they're thinking about things like that.
I love that. I think that's great because it's beneficial to the Canadian businesses that are out there to sell their products and get more recognition for their products, because there's a lot of great Canadian products that people don't know about because they're so used to the commercials that you see on American TV and stuff, right? So you're just going to go and buy that product because that's that's what you're familiar with. But there's a lot of great Canadian products out there that people don't know about.
Well, I think, if people are expecting Canada to ever be like a financial powerhouse, it's unfortunately it's just never going to happen when we've got a tenth of the size of the population of the United States. Obviously, because most of our country is quite frigid with the weather that we have, but we still have a lot of resources, a lot of stuff that's useful and available to us, and it's important for both countries to work together in the long run if we're able to.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately that's how it's always been. This is the first time in our history as neighbors that we've ever had a trade war like this. And it seems completely useless and redundant.
Well, we don't really want to be fighting off the ice, but they certainly were on the ice.
That's
that first game between Canada and the U.S. What did you guys think of that?
Oh my gosh, yeah, especially that first game. It was like within the first
9 seconds.
How many?
First 9 seconds.
Two fights in 9 seconds.
3 fights in 9 seconds.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't
The first
know
2
that.
fights were in the first 3 seconds.
I have a theory behind that. I think that what happened was, again, talking about what the big, again, I'd bring it back to the politics that are happening, but I mean, ultimately that was the reason why we're booing the national anthem and whatnot, right? My theory is that I think they got together, the players got together on both sides before the game and said, we should probably do something, to sort of deal with this political issue. Let's fight for the first 9, for the right at the opening face-off. I think maybe that's because, I mean, I see that a lot when it comes to like momentum in hockey. Like, obviously that's the whole purpose of fighting in hockey is for momentum, but I also think that it's sort of a way to squash issues, and you see that when it comes to like people getting hit in hockey and things like that, where the next game they play each other, there's a big fight or whatever to sort of make up for it, right? Do you think at all there's any validity to that?
I don't think so. I think the Americans did. And I think there's been a little bit of scrutiny within the media, a little bit about that. Mm-hmm. And there's been shots fired after the fact as well. Just how, like the Tkachuk brothers are on a world tour right now. Like,
I know, it's crazy.
They might be the opening
As
act
if
for
they
Taylor
won the
Swift
whole
or
thing.
something. Like, I'm not really sure. But, like, I think Matthew Tkachuk was on Jimmy Fallon last week or something. And I think there was one point where Brady said something along the lines of, yeah, we had a group chat in the morning and we were talking about it and we thought we were going to try to make something happen. And then Hagel was like, I don't play, like, we don't have group chats. I don't play for the cameras. I play from the crest, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, he could be lying, but who knows, right? You'd like to believe him as a Canadian fan, although he's kind of still now he's back to being a little bit of a rat. So he can stay down in Tampa for all I care. But I mean, he was a bit of a warrior during the tournament, right? But just that intensity, not even in that game, but right from the very beginning when they were playing Sweden too. Like, it was a pretty intense game, and it's the same when the Americans played Finland. That was a rough game. Yeah. Right? And there was, I didn't necessarily expect that to happen just because usually, replacing the All-Star weekend, guys kind of like to chill out a little bit, but it was so hyped. The tournament had been so hyped, and I think the NHL was actually worried about it leading up to.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They were increasing their commercials and whatnot and the marketing for it, and then it ended up being like really awesome, I thought, overall.
I did too, actually. we went into that tournament, and I personally believed I wouldn't watch it because I felt like it doesn't mean anything. What's the big deal? But the hockey was so good that you had no choice. And I mean, I was watching for the players on the Canucks too, right? Like I was watching Sweden, and I was watching, I was watching Lankinen on the Finland team, and obviously watching Canada just because it's Canada. Rick Tocchet was one of the coaches on Team Canada too, so that was pretty exciting. It was exciting to watch.
Yeah, like when I think starting off with Canada to start out the tournament, just because again, it's known to be our sport because obviously it was created here. They had a large viewership even for that first game, which set the tone for the tournament in my opinion. And it was an intense tournament. Like, the hitting was there, the rough stuff with the tournament was there. Even the like as I was talking about earlier with the coaching, you could see the matchups happening all the way throughout the game, just like you would see in a regular hockey game. But when you're doing best on best, that intensity and that pressure to win is that much more, and so it's that much more exciting to watch. Like certainly when I was watching Canada and Sweden too, I was gritting my teeth on some of the goals that Binnington let in, but at the same time I was jumping out of my seat when Canada scored, and looking at the overtime too, right? The way that turned out.
So obviously, with me being a Canuck fan, and I'm not an Oiler fan by any means, anytime McDavid scored a goal, other than the final, of course, but anytime McDavid scored a goal, I never celebrated. And it's funny because my son always pointed it out to me. He's like, "Daddy, you're not celebrating?" I'm like, "Well, no, because McDavid scored. I cannot cheer for McDavid."
I don't think there was many.
Yeah, and no, I think there was like one or two, but yeah. But in the end, like even when he did score in a non-meaningful, quote unquote, non-meaningful game, like I just didn't find myself excited about it. If it was Crosby, if it was McKinnon, of course I'm cheering because obviously I respect those players, but and I don't disrespect McDavid. I just can't cheer for him because he's an Oiler. You know what I mean? Like it's hard for me. But in the end, when it really mattered, of course I cheered. I was so excited when that final goal went in.
Yeah. Yeah, it was great to see Crosby and McKinnon be able to play together kind of on an international style tournament. There's still the possibility they might play next year in the Olympics together, but you never know. Crosby could have a career-ending injury, and that might be the only time that they get to play international hockey together.
We could see Bedard play for Team Canada in the Olympics, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's 4 guys on that team from BC.
Mm-hmm.
Can you guys name who they are? I'll give you a hint. There's a forward, 2 defensemen, and a goalie.
Devon Taves.
He's from Abbotsford.
A goalie.
Was it Aiden Hill?
Yeah, he's from Comox.
Oh, you know what? I think I knew that. Yeah. He's an island guy. Yeah. Wait, you said a goalie, 2 defensemen?
2 defensemen and a forward. You need a defenseman and a forward. One of them is a pretty big hockey family.
That's a tough one.
He plays in the East. From Vancouver, but he plays in the East. He's from North Vancouver specifically.
Did Morgan Riley play in Team Canada?
No.
Yeah, I would have said Morgan Riley.
Yeah.
Did.
It's Sam Reinhart.
Oh, Reinhart.
That's
Yes,
right.
of course.
And then
The
from
defenseman.
Aldergrove, Shea Theodore.
Shea Theodore. What? He played?
Yeah. Well, he got hurt the first game.
Very
I was
first
going to
game.
say. Yeah, that's right.
Poor guy. So
I
it
was
was
gonna
kind
be-
of a trick question.
What I
guess.
was thinking was, he played? I thought he was hurt because he got hurt at the tournament.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, if you bring that up, right, like we're talking about the injuries that happened during the tournament, because this wasn't really a meaningful tournament in regards to the actual NHL season. It was meaningful to the countries. What are the ownership and the teams thinking now that they have these players like Shea Theodore, who's out for weeks right now because he broke his wrist at a tournament like this.
Matthew Tkachuk's on LTIR.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to probably permit Florida to do something pretty big at the trade deadline. That's is it? He's 9.5 or something.
Yeah.
On their cap, it might even be a little bit more than that.
Both Tkachuk brothers literally gave it their all for this
Oh, yeah.
tournament, and I'm sure they all did, but like they were physical, and so there are repercussions. There are repercussions to being that physical and that aggressive. And unfortunately for Florida fans, that's what they're seeing right now. Now, I'm predicting he's going to be all better by the first game of the playoffs, but we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And yeah, I mean, for those of you listening, they may not realize, but today is actually the day before trade deadline day. There's been a lot of trades and stuff that we've seen. We're not going to talk about it on this episode because we're doing a live stream tomorrow on YouTube, so it's pretty exciting. And if you did watch our live stream, give us a comment and let us know, because I want to hear about who's checking us out on YouTube. I think it'll be a lot of fun tomorrow. I'm hoping technically, my fingers are crossed, I'm hoping technically everything works great, but we'll just go with what we got, and I know at least one camera angle will work.
Now, in terms of the round robin standings, did that kind of turn out in terms of the placings of the teams that you were expecting?
I think so. I would say that it's a little strange because it's a different point system.
Yeah.
Right. You get 3 points for a win, and we've got 4 columns that you can have a win in overtime, a loss in overtime. Like they count it differently for every single thing. So I still think there could have been more games. I think that round robin was 3, and then that's kind of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would have liked to have seen a little bit more with just how I think the tournament ended up being, and how the hype it was for the past year and everything they did to kind of market it and get it ready. I would have liked a little bit more. At the beginning, I think a lot of us were kind of like, yeah, let's get this over with, right? But as it was going on, I'm like, oh no, I don't want this to end. This is great. Mm-hmm. So I think as far as standings go, yeah, that's probably where everybody should have been. I wonder if it would have been different if there was a few more games.
And probably would have been. Like I was surprised to at least see Finland not get a regulation win at all in the tournament. They did get one win. It was the overtime win over Sweden, but they didn't pull anything else out of their hat with that tournament. It was quite surprising.
I will say this about the tournament that might be a negative in that these breaks that happen mid-season, I found in some cases it does hurt teams.
Oh, totally.
Because, they go on a break, they go sit on a beach for a couple of weeks, and then try to come back and play intense hockey. It's like they forgot their systems, or they're just, it's like you've got to get back into that groove again. It can be really challenging for a lot of teams to find that groove again. And I use Vancouver as that perfect example, because they were on a winning streak when everything shut down for the tournament, and then when they came back, they went on a losing streak. So, it's up and down for a lot of teams, especially teams that aren't at the top.
I think that's a nice probably way to maybe move into how we expect our own teams to kind of perform, because, you were just talking about Canucks aren't playing so well.
Yeah.
The Leafs were, sorta. Their record was good because they went on a 5-game winning streak after the tournament, but they really weren't playing well. And I think Paul and I, we talked about it a little bit. It's going to bite them, and it has. They're now on a 2-game losing streak, but even out of the 5 games that they won, there's probably only 1 game where they really deserve to win. They managed to get down, and their offense is so strong they can come back in a lot of games, or at least they have an opportunity to.
Yeah.
But realistically, they're not playing well. Like, I don't know, is it a coincidence because Tanev's gone? I mean, the goaltending has been great all year except for right now.
Mm-hmm. I think the one thing, like when you're looking at the wins that they had, at least post-tournament here, is that you can see the difference on this team this year than previous years, where if they get down, they're kind of out. They've been, at least I've noticed a few times this year, when they've gone down, they're there to fight and still come back. And like that Boston game, to be honest, like, again, as much as we love the Bruins, to see that comeback and to see the no giving up attitude for that win, that's exactly what I want to see from my team.
Yeah, you want to see your team do the right thing. And I mean, yeah. I know, watching the Canucks play, last season is a perfect example, actually. The games that they lost, I felt like at least they gave an effort and they made it a game, like they're playing well defensively and whatnot. So that's what you want to see. But if your team is literally sitting back and letting the offense drive the play, and you're not really doing anything to put a forecheck forward, that can be really frustrating for a fan. And I can say I've seen that a lot this year with Vancouver. It's definitely frustrating when you consider the fact that they were a completely different team last year, winning the Pacific and everything. But this tournament I felt like did hurt Vancouver. The break specifically, going into that 2-week break, there were players like Connor Garland and I also think of Dakota Joshua, who was playing really well before the break, took the break and then came back, and it's like he forgot how to play again. He's doing better now, like as of today, which is like 2 weeks now since they started playing again. But it took a while for him to get that momentum again, right? So it can be frustrating. And then of course you also consider the fact that trade deadline is tomorrow, and these teams are going to look different after the trade deadline, right? So like what kind of defense are these teams going to come with, or offense even in that case? There's, a lot of teams are going to have a lot better forwards joining their teams, and they might have a lot worse forwards on their teams based on selling or buying, right? So it just depends on those kind of factors too.
How has Lankinen been playing? Because he really didn't have a good tournament at the Four Nations, right?
You know what? Actually, I agree. I felt like he was a bit soft in the tournament. He's been really well. He's been playing really well. Again, I can't blame him for a lot of the losses that the Canucks had that he played in after the tournament, just for the fact that the defense hasn't been there. The forecheck hasn't been there. The game against Anaheim the other day was probably their best game all year, just based on hard on the puck constantly. They played 60 minutes of hockey for the first time all season. It was exciting to see, and I'm hoping this is, a sign of things to come. And again, it's tough because trade deadline's tomorrow. We don't know what Vancouver's going to look like on Friday night, right? So, it's a challenge for sure. I'll tell you one thing too. You talk about, teams that are going on like kind of losing streaks or not playing the same. Edmonton's a perfect example of that. They're on I think 6-game losing streak. They just lost 6-2 to Anaheim the other day. Goaltending has been a big problem for them. And it's funny because, I thought I saw an interview kind of reported on Twitter at some point where their GM had said they're not looking at goaltending in the trade market.
I find that hard to believe.
It's hard to believe, and B, it's like, what are you thinking? Of course you should be looking for goaltending. And I'm sure Oilers fans would say the same thing. Oh, yeah. They're not going to be selling, this trade deadline because they're a contender, if not the contender. When you consider now what, Florida and Tampa have been doing in the trade market, but Edmonton's got to be gearing up for big things this offseason, or this playoffs, I should say.
Well, you have to look, I guess, what like a best and best tournament like this does for the players that were involved in the tournament compared to the players that weren't, right? Like I'm noticeably seeing with some of the star players that were in that tournament, the fatigue that happens with having been in a tournament that was that intense. You have the rest of the team that's resting and so on. But, I look at McDavid. He hasn't had that greatest stats since he's come back from the tournament. Matthews was pretty slow to start getting goals. He's been just recently in the last couple of games starting to get some goals, but I believe that there was definitely, especially your star players being an embodiment of your team. You could see kind of the rust that was happening the fatigue, from having been involved in that tournament, and it kind of rubs off onto your team at the same time because you rely on those star players to kind of motivate you, carry the team. If they score that goal that kind of gets you all driven up and ready, you kind of need that. And if they're not bringing that energy, it affects the rest of the team, I find.
Yeah, it's got to. I mean, players feed off each other, especially on a team like Edmonton, right, where it's like you have expectations.
It's the same in Toronto with Matthews. Yeah. I mean, he's on a 10-game point streak, but I really don't think he's been playing that well.
No, I don't think either.
Especially not away from the puck, right? And him being thrown into that captain role is really kind of, I wonder if it's been a bit of pressure this year because they haven't really shown consistently that he's been injured. Like he was kind of nursing something towards the beginning, or back at the beginning of the year, but really there hasn't been much of an issue since, at least not that we're hearing about or knowing about. So you wonder if there's something else because he just seems off. It seems like he's not locked in all the time, not making the right decisions, positionally not being where he normally is. The goal scoring's there. I mean, I think he's hit like 7 posts in the last 4 games. Like, it's close, right? If the guy rips the puck, most times it's got a good chance to go in. That's just how he is. That's the name he has for himself. That's the player that he's become. But there's just something off about him, and I think what I need as a fan and what we need as Leafs fans, if I can speak for everyone, is something more. It may not be that goal, but it's got to be something else. It's got to be, finish that check, which he does a little bit. Not as much as I'd love. He's a big guy. Yeah. But, being that person that's going to back check and be in the right spot. And normally he is back, but I don't know, he just doesn't seem to be as locked in as he normally is.
And maybe it has to do with the players, like I said, the players that they played with during the tournament, and now the players that they're back playing with their teams, right? Like Matthews, if you look at him during the tournament there, he was probably the USA's best two-way forward. He was there the entire time. He wasn't rough and gruff like the Kachucks were, but he was an influence in the games. Same with Mitch Marner in terms of, he's known to be a defensive player, at least for the Leafs. He maybe wasn't as noticed during the tournament for some of his defensive play or even point making, but I look at him right now in terms of the
what?
Sorry, you're doing this.
Don't pay attention to me.
You're like looking at me.
Yeah, I'm stretching my eye.
Sorry. Okay. So you look at
I didn't even notice.
You look at Mitch Marner, and like I said, he didn't necessarily have the greatest like point scoring or point getting tournament in terms of being noticed, but he played in key moments. Right, he scored the overtime goal in the Canada's first game. He set up McDavid for the tournament winning goal. I look at him coming now back into the season, and he seems a little fatigued, but I think he's amped up at least his value that much more for his team.
That brings me to my point. Talking about him being fatigued. I've been telling myself this, especially with Vancouver, is like, part of me thinks that a lot of these players are trying to somewhat take it easy to gear up for the playoffs. Like there's a specific point where they start going, okay, now we need to up the intensity, and that because how they get, if they play say 2 straight months of intense hockey, it can really drain you, and then you're not ready for the finals or something like that, right? And a lot of that is valid when you consider what happened with Vancouver last year playing against Edmonton, because they had a really great series against Nashville, and then in that final game against Edmonton, they just didn't have it. They didn't have the energy.
Yeah. Well, to kind of quote our buddy Mikey, we kind of look at the need for, I guess, kind of rest before the playoffs. It's kind of the idea when Mark Stone going on the LTIR,
I know,
right? So,
yeah. Everyone, the constant jokes of like, okay, so when are they going to announce Mark Stone on LTIR? It's so funny, and that, like I said, that was the joke I had for who were we just talking? We were talking about a player on LTIR. Oh, yeah, Matthew Tkachuk, when I said Matthew Tkachuk would be on LTIR as well.
Mark Stone did have a ruptured spleen. Give the guy a bit of a break.
It's just so funny.
It's coincidence.
That was the year they won the Cup.
No, I know.
And he came back.
And then last year they did it with Hurdle.
1. Yeah.
Right? He had a bummed knee when they traded for him.
That's right. Yeah. Quote, unquote.
So they'll be trading for Mikko Rantanen next when he goes on LTIR, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. It's funny because we look back at the tournament itself and how it affected the players. I think about the intensity that Team USA brought to the game. Austin Matthews was a perfect example of that. I mean, he was probably one of the best players on the team, when it comes to the offense that he brings. What are your thoughts on, say, overall USA's defensive game, with, say, Austin Matthews? I mean, that goal that McDavid scored at the end, that was Austin Matthews, guy he should have been.
Blunder,
he should have been,
yeah.
I mean, it's pretty hard to knock the defense of the Americans for the most part.
Yes.
And they were missing Quinn Hughes.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
and Charlie McAvoy in the final game.
Yeah, that's right. After the first game against the Canadiens,
and
McAvoy.
Matthew Tkachuk was injured throughout the game.
He literally played. Did he play?
Like 9 minutes, I think, the entire game.
I don't even know if it was that long, Paul, but he basically, but he didn't leave the bench. I thought that was pretty cool. He wanted to be there, right? Yeah. So I mean, that you could see that they're passionate and whatnot, and it meant more to them too, right?
Yeah. The big argument. Sorry to interrupt, but the big argument with Matthew Tkachuk playing was that Kyle Connor couldn't play. Because of the space, the position that Matthew Tkachuk was taking up. So it was really interesting to kind of see that decision and have him only play like you said, up to 9 minutes in the first period, basically. Never saw the ice again after that. So pretty crazy.
Yeah, we look at we kind of talk about the rosters, and you're talking about Kyle Connor not being able to play. I still look at a guy like Mark Scheifele. In my opinion, should have made the team over. Looking hindsight now, should have made it over a guy like Brandon Hagel or even
Well, Cirelli.
See, now I was fine with Cirelli making the team. I thought Cirelli, because I knew that he was a good two-way center and he'd be good for the fourth line.
Mm-hmm. I think the reason why they decided on Hagel over Scheifele is speed more than anything.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. I look at a guy like Scheifele's size. He would have been perfect down the middle for the third, probably even the third line in my personal opinion. But I obviously, after the tournament's over now, I can't complain with the results. Like, Team Canada played great. Sam Bennett had an important goal, and again, if you had looked last year or the year before, you'd probably say, well, Sam Bennett making Team Canada, I don't know about that. I would have picked Mark Scheifele. Like somebody ahead of him,
or a John Tavares.
Yeah,
somebody like that with a little more experience, right?
But we're post tournament now. We've seen the results, and like, there's no complaints. I'm happy with exactly how every player that was there played, and obviously Thomas Harley getting that emergency call in to come in for Taylor. He was great with Doughty.
He played well. Yeah,
he was really good with Doughty.
So let me ask you guys this. I know you guys are Leaf fans, so you're going to have a biased opinion on this when it comes down to it. But do you think after this tournament and after all of his other success as head coach, John Cooper, is he the best head coach in the NHL?
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to say no, right?
and then I'm not going to give an explanation just based upon what I've seen. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying, take your Leaf hat off for a second, which you are ironically wearing one. But take your Leaf hat off for a second and just think of it as a overall, structured coach who knows how to utilize his players. And he's got some of the best players in the world, being the coach of Team Canada, but he knows how to utilize his players. It just feels to me like there's no better coach to coach Team Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, like, nothing to do with being a Leafs fan. Like, if I were to say no, it has nothing to do with the fact that he's the coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Right.
That would have nothing to do with my answer. If I were to say no, my answer would be because I think maybe another coach is a slightly better coach than he is. But, because somebody like Rod Brind'Amour comes up for me.
Yes.
And I have really high praise for Rod Brind'Amour. And, Carolina's statistics for the past 4 or 5 seasons would show that technically he probably is the best coach on the ice. But then Paul Maurice in Florida, look what he's done with that team consecutive years. So, I mean, I'm not going to say no, because John Cooper, with the success he's had, the Cups,
and that's just it.
Right?
That's literally all I'm basing it on.
Yeah,
and the game, just the way he utilizes the players.
I think the way he handles media.
Yeah,
we get some not backstage, but back footage behind the scenes and some mic'd up moments, like when he was talking to Binnington. I would not even try to say what he said, but it's something along the lines of, hey, big players and big moments, kid, way to go.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? Because he knew that people were doubting Binnington, and he said, you know what? No, I'm sticking with my guy.
That's right.
And, there you go. Could you argue that him staying with Binnington is that head coaching prowess that he's had so much success with?
He knows how it works, right? And yeah, I just feel like it's hard for me to sit here and say, I agree Brind'Amour is a great coach. I just don't, based on the fact that John Cooper's got all the success that he has, including with the players he's had over the years. Brind'Amour has had great players, but he hasn't had the same kind of results.
Yeah.
So ultimately, for me, John Cooper is number one when I think about it. So no better coach to lead Team Canada. I was very proud to have Rick Tocchet, the coach of the Canucks, as an assistant on the bench too. But ultimately, that's John Cooper's team, and he's making those final decisions. And I'm hoping that Tocchet learns something from him. So when it comes to the playoffs, maybe we'll see that. I don't know.
Well, it's kind of funny, like, things can change on a dime too when it comes to coaches, players, and anything like that. Again, you look at Mike Babcock for, again, coaching Team Canada for the wins that they had during the Olympics, and now nobody would touch him with the 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
It's amazing how fast those things can change.
It is. It really is. Yeah, things change.
Yeah, nothing's guaranteed.
Nothing's guaranteed. We as Canadians are lucky to have the team that we had and the coaches that we had, and the tournament worked out great for us. I will say firsthand that I was not the most confident in Team Canada during this tournament, and I think that's what made it so exciting for them to come back and win it in the end. I feel like we really got our quote-unquote money's worth, and it was exciting to watch the whole way through. Well, gentlemen, before we wrap the show up, I just thought it would be a good time to maybe talk about a couple of passings we had recently. A couple of actors, Michelle Trachtenberg, who you may remember from the movie Euro Trip. That's where I remember her from, and I know she was in a lot of other stuff too.
Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and of course Gene Hackman recently passed away as well. Really sad to hear about that one specifically. It was sad to hear about both, but really sad to hear about that one specifically because, from what I understand, it was Gene Hackman, his wife, and their dog passing away at the same time.
What's so strange is it seems suspicious.
Yeah.
They're saying there's reports that are coming out consistently as they do more autopsies or checks and more investigation. But it sounds like Gene Hackman was dead for like a week before anybody else was.
Crazy.
Crazy. It's a very strange situation.
It is. You know,
he lived a long life, though.
He did. Yeah, he did. He really did, and he had a really great career as an actor as well.
Yeah, he
did. One of my dad's favorite actors, if not my dad's favorite actor, Gene Hackman, and then Tommy Lee Jones are like his two number one actors.
Classic.
And so, you know, I think of Gene Hackman. When I think of Gene Hackman, I think of Lex Luthor.
That's exactly where my head was going.
I think of Superman, and he was a great Superman. You know, I also loved him in there's a movie he did with Will Smith. What is it
Enemy
called?
of the State.
Enemy of the State. Yeah, that's right. It was a fun one. I really enjoyed that movie.
I watched that not long ago, I don't think.
Yeah, and he's really good in it. But he's been in so many different movies that I just felt like, you know, he really portrayed the character well, and he also played a bad guy really good too. Like Lex Luthor is incredible.
Well, he was really talk about like bad guys, right? He was really good in Runaway Jury with John Cusack.
That's right.
Playing kind of a slimeball kind of. Was he a lawyer in the movie?
No, they just called him a jury consultant.
That's right.
In that movie. Yeah. Another one I watched recently. Yeah, that one's a classic, Gene Hackman. I would say my actually favorite from his is a movie from the 80s, and I think it was 1984 or 1983 called Uncommon Valor.
Yeah,
that's right.
Right,
you talk about that one.
Yeah.
Is that the one you keep telling me to watch?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's a great war movie.
Yeah.
That's one that sticks out for me, and that's, you know, we're talking 35 or almost 40 years ago. Or 40 years ago. More than 40.
Consistently acting for a really long time. I feel like he only retired from acting, say, 5 years ago. Something like that.
It's funny you say that. His last film, I mean, maybe he did some TV, but his last film was 2004.
2004.
Kind of
wow.
like he did like a whole Sean Connery thing where he's just like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah, and you know, honestly, good on him for doing that. So he got to live 20 years just to enjoy life, right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, he did live a long life. It's unfortunate the way it ended, but at least we can look back and kind of remember all the good stuff.
When you talk about long life, right? You look at somebody like Michelle Trachtenberg. She didn't even make it to 40.
No.
You know, it's so young to pass away. Like, obviously, there's people that are younger that passed away sooner than her, but again, she might not have been known for the same acting chops.
Yeah.
But again, tragic for someone like her to pass. I believe it was liver disease.
I was going to say liver disease. It was she was getting like a liver transplant or something.
Yeah, there was complications with surgery, I think.
Right.
Yeah, or complications after surgery.
So unfortunate.
Yeah. If you look at her photos from the last couple of years, she didn't look very healthy. So
when you have an unhealthy liver, like it literally does affect your face. You look white and, you know, pale, and yeah, it's unfortunate. You know, I don't have a lot of like memories of a lot of stuff she did, but I do remember Eurotrip. That was a fun movie. If you've never seen it before, it's hilarious. It's so funny. It's definitely not a kid's movie. There's, you know, nudity, swearing, and all that stuff, and of course the theme of the movie. But it's really funny. Matt Damon has a really funny role in that movie too. But yeah, you know, it's unfortunate to lose somebody so young. Who, you know, she did have some great roles too.
Yeah, she did, and ones that you remember. And again, a lot of people will remember her for Buffy. I won't lie that she was. I've had a lot of crushes in Hollywood in my life, but she on that particular show, she was a crush on there. Like everyone's like, oh, Sarah Michelle Gellar's the pretty one. I'm like, no, I like Michelle Trachtenberg.
A little mysterious side.
Yeah.
Yeah, she started young too, right? Like she was just a little kid when she started acting. So
yeah.
She was doing like Disney stuff, I think, or Nickelodeon or something like that. I can't remember.
Might have been Nickelodeon.
Don't quote me on that, but yeah.
Might have been Nickelodeon. It's it's unfortunate she didn't have the opportunity to obviously expand probably her Hollywood resume and stuff like that at this point in life. She's probably, like I said, she's been fighting this disease for the last little while, and it ultimately took her life. So, there might have been more ahead for her, and it's, God rest her soul in regards to no longer being with us now.
And Gene Hackman as well, and his wife and his dog. It's it's unfortunate. I know there are, I feel like sometimes you'll hear of a passing in Hollywood, like an actor or somebody, and then you'll hear like a week later somebody else, and then a week later somebody else. It like happens in threes, it seems like. But yeah, it's just it's unfortunate that people have to kind of go that way. But it's nice to hear that at least Gene specifically had a nice long life. He got to really enjoy his career and enjoy retirement as well. Michelle, unfortunately, at such a young age, not even 40, she was like 35, 36, right? Or 39.
39, yeah.
Still, not even 40, and, unfortunately taken too soon. So, in the end, I think we all consider it too soon, but, our thoughts and prayers go to their families, and, from all of us at the Puck and Pod, we hope their families are coping okay, and, life does go on for some of us out there.
We're talking about actors passings, and obviously this is kind of more of a lower note, but considering, like I said, we've lost two respected actors, is there anyone that either both of you guys could think of that if they were gone tomorrow, it would really affect you emotionally?
Like actors?
Actors.
I was like, obviously my family.
Actors, yeah, Hollywood related.
I mean, when Robin Williams passed away, that literally brought tears to my eyes because everything he did was incredible. I literally today was on Twitter while I was waiting to go to work, and there was a video on Twitter. It was a commercial with his full-grown daughter playing a Wii game with Robin Williams. It's like they digitally added him or something like that, but it kind of made you, tear up because you're just like, man, you don't realize you miss somebody until you kind of see them again after so long, and you just think, wow, it would have been really cool to have him back again.
I don't know if I can pinpoint an actor or actress that I find that way about. I could probably tell you a handful of musicians. Mm-hmm. For me, I mean, music's such a big part of my life. That's too.
Right.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be actors. It could be a musician too.
Yeah, I mean, any like Elton John, who's been a big influence on me as an entertainer and the way I sing, things like that. You get classic acts like Keith Richards or Mick Jagger from the Stones. Like, it would probably affect me. Yeah. Just like I've mentioned before, when I went and saw the James Taylor concert, I'm not even that big of a James Taylor fan. But watching him play in the stadium at 75 years old, he comes out soft, and then when it's time to rock, he gets up, he throws his stool out of the way, and he's already a 6'9" or something. He's a monstrous man, and he makes that guitar look so small, but he just plays the hell out of it, and he sings, and he's scatting and having a good time and jumping up and down with the drummer and cueing everybody and having a blast. I was in tears watching that performance just to be in the vicinity of such legendary status, right? Yeah. Somebody with a career as long as James Taylor and the things that he's overcome in his life. So I would say people like that would affect me more than say an actor. If I had to pick one, I mean, Denzel Washington, who's probably my favorite actor, I'd probably be pretty upset if he were to go. A guy like Matt Damon, movies that you just have loved over the years. Yeah. But I don't think that I would say, oh, yeah, like I need to take a couple days off work if that guy went.
Yeah. Like, that's not the point I'm going.
No, I know, for sure.
I didn't feel that way when Robin Williams died, but I was very sad, for sure. I definitely was.
Yeah, if I look at, I guess, people that have, had some influence in my life, when Princess Diana actually passed away, that was actually quite an emotional thing for my entire family. My mom had grown up in England and talked about Princess Diana and stuff like that, so that was definitely affecting. Same with the Queen when she passed. Actually, not as important.
I was less emotional with the Queen, but I understood the seriousness of the matter to the people of England, right? I mean, she's our queen too in Canada, but it just felt like it was time because she was almost 100 years old. She'd served the people for so long that it just for me it didn't surprise me in any way, but it was sad for sure.
Shocking for me was when Michael Jackson passed. To be
Yeah.
honest, I was a huge Michael Jackson music fan when I was a kid. So when he passed, it was very surprising. Surprisingly, because I love Marvel and love the movies as much as I do. When Chadwick Boseman went, that was because it was so surprising, right?
Yeah, like nobody knew anything.
Nobody knew anything about it. If I was looking at least actors that I've right now, that if I wouldn't necessarily get so emotional about it, but it would certainly affect me.
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins when he passes, he's had had so many roles, and he's a really genuine human being when you see him in interviews.
Or like Morgan Freeman.
Yep.
Yeah. I know.
It's those legendary status guys.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they've paid their dues. They've been around. They've done everything. They're humanitarians. They're philanthropists. They're, outspoken. They contribute to charities and are doing so much work with the entire world and have done for 60 years that, even guys like Matt Damon, you know what? I bet you in 25 years, we're going to be saying the same thing about somebody like that.
Absolutely.
Leonardo DiCaprio, these guys are going to have their mark as much as they already do already. Mm-hmm. It's going to just be that much more too. So I think it's just that fact that everybody considers guys like that to be the best.
Yeah, legendary.
Until they're gone, and then somebody else moves up into that category, right?
And surprises you. That's right. I'm just waiting for that replacement for Robin Williams. I mean, there's some funny guys out there, but like nobody does it like Robin Williams did it,
I was thinking earlier, as you kind of mentioned that you were going to ask about which actors or actresses may, affect you. Mm. One of my first thoughts was Jim Carrey. And he's kind of like fallen right off the map, right? Like Jim Carrey was such a big part of my childhood.
Yeah.
And
he kind of has fallen right off the map, right? He doesn't.
What's funny about him is that he threatened to retire from acting. He didn't threaten. He said he was going to do it, but he's still kind of like he just did the Sonic 3 movie, right? And he still does the characters like Jim Carrey's supposed to do it, right? Yeah. Like he's still Mr. Rubberface. Like he still, performs and he's still funny and all that stuff. But it's like he's not in everything anymore. So it's like you don't see him that often, and unless you watch the Sonic movies, which typically are kids movies and stuff, you're not going to notice him as much anymore. So I totally get where you're coming from when you say that. Well, gentlemen, I feel like this is probably a good place to end the pod today. We've said our, goodbyes, so to speak, to those we've lost. But we said our goodbyes to the Four Nations tournament as well. That was an intense tournament, and I'm really glad in the end we got to watch something like that. That was so meaningful because it's preparing us for the Olympics, which is coming up real soon.
Yep, that's right.
So
hard to believe, really.
Yeah, it is really hard to believe, but it's exciting at the same time. And we're preparing physically for an intense day tomorrow, being trade deadline day in the NHL. We're going to be live streaming for like 6 hours tomorrow. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really, really hoping the technology works and we don't have any issues. But of course, I'll knock on wood when I say that. But of course, things do happen and we'll just work our way around it. And it will be our first kind of on camera, quote unquote podcast. It's a live stream, but you will be able to watch it, of course, on our YouTube channel after the fact as well. And hopefully you, the audience, like it. Please join us on the podcast and join us on future podcasts as well. We will be doing video podcasts real soon. So prepare yourselves for that. And of course, you can comment on any of our social medias. We're available on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook at the puckn Pod. Are we on Blue Sky? Do you know?
I don't know.
I'm not sure either. Maybe we'll have to get a Blue Sky account as well.
We'll work on it.
Get ourselves away from that Elon Musk. Anyway. But, of course, we're on YouTube as well. And you can also reach us wherever you find your podcasts. We're available, Amazon,
Spotify,
iHeartRadio, etc. So make sure you check us out there if you haven't already. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, for the Puckn Pod, my name is Joe.
My name is Brandon.
And I'm Paul.
We will see you guys in the next one.